Howdy y'all, I wanted to talk about Stygian Outer Gods. Now this is a game that's a first person horror slash survival sort of experience. It's very reminiscent of a game like the newer Resident Evil ones, particularly 7 and especially 8. It reminds me of Resident Evil 8 a lot. If you took the concept of that, specifically like the village part, which is kind of like the central hub of the game, and you made that sort of the entire game, that's what this is. It's a game where you're solving puzzles as well as fighting some enemies, but the resources are a little bit more limited. And I played this on a normal to easy difficulty, and overall, I had a really good time with it. I wasn't able to finish the game all the way through just because I struggled quite a bit with it the further in I got. And there was a little bit of an issue I had with a save point that kind of took me a little bit further, I think, than originally intended. And it kind of threw me all out of whack, and it was kind of hard to recover from that. But overall, I really had a good time with this. It reminded me as well of the game Call of Cthulhu. And it had a similar vibe to that as well. That was another game that was a first-person horror experience. It was maybe a more narrative puzzle. There were less moments of action in it. The game reminded me of Call of Cthulhu as well, which was a horror survival FPS experience as well. Although that was more narrative puzzle, not as much action. It was few and far between action, that one, if I recall correctly. So I thought this game looked really good. I ran it on my PC. Glad to have this new PC to run this thing, and it ran pretty smooth overall. And the experience overall didn't have too many hiccups or anything, with the exception of this save issue that popped up partway through. They kind of messed everything all up. Again, though, it was kind of in this sort of beta mode, and they were adding new content onto it, so sometimes things like this happen. I was able to play with controller. All the controls I felt worked pretty well, because sometimes with these puzzle sort of like games, using an analog stick can be wonky sometimes when you need it, but I thought it all worked mostly pretty good. It has an inventory slot as well. Similar to Resident Evil, again, you get a certain amount of inventory space that you do have to manage as you collect items, but you get safe houses. And there's safe houses spread throughout this map, so you have one map that covers the entire area. And somewhat similar to Resident Evil Village, you go through the map and you eventually get to different sections of the map through various ways. And then every once in a blue moon, you'll be taken somewhere else completely different. That's this sort of alternate reality state, is the best way I could kind of describe it. You start the game there, and then the further you get into the game after you complete a section, then you'll go back there. This is a game that has a lot of fetch questing. That's what most of the quests are. Whether it's the main quests or the side quests, if you like fetch quests, this is gonna be your jam. That's what I felt like to me all the quests were. It's go find this for this person, go find this to open this door, that sort of thing. But as you go along through, you counter enemies, and there's quite a few enemies in this game in a small little space. The cool part about the game, though, is that you do have the option to take the enemies out stealthily. You can sneak by them if you want to, or you can try physically take them out. And knowing me, I chose the latter option, and most of the time it worked. I did feel playing it that it was geared more towards a stealth playthrough. I felt like that's maybe what it was more meant to be as an experience. But as a person who isn't a huge stealth person, I had to do what I needed to do and cause a little bit of chaos. There were times going into it where I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna make it past this enemy because I'm running low on bullets. I don't know how I'm gonna get through this, but I would just manage to find a way through. Whether it's just resetting myself, using the melee option, or I managed to scrounge around somewhere else and find one extra bullet that I needed to take out an enemy, and then I'd make it through. And even though I said the game is more stealth related, it does give you a variety of items to not only use to progress in the game, but also to fight back and heal yourself. The game gives you a lot of healing options. You can use a bandage, a trinket, a first aid kit, which does a little bit more. You also have these pills you can take to lower your sanity, because that's another issue of this game, is as you're going through, sometimes you hit these areas that got these little creepy things all over the place, and you need to lower your sanity down, because as you get closer to it, your sanity starts to go further and further down, and you need to take these pills to ramp it back up. So with these sanity pills, there's different areas in the game you come across that look really creepy, and you're like, I don't want to go down there, but you kind of have to go down there to get some extra cool little things for extra quests or whatnot, or extra items. And as you go through these areas, your sanity meter starts to go down, and if it goes all the way down, well, let's just say that's not a good thing. So you also get these little items to take, these little pills to kind of calm yourself down. But I found, though, that these sanity items were a lot fewer and far between compared to the first aid stuff. I felt like I was finding more ways to heal myself throughout the experience than taking these pills, just because there was such a variety of first aid. And you have these little plants you collect. They are green, very reminiscent of Resident Evil herbs, that sort of thing, as your base. Speaking of crafting, let's talk about crafting bullets, because that's the thing you should do in this game. If I were to recommend a player tip, is try to craft your resources more around the bullets as much as you can. You'll be running around collecting gunpowder, and then there's certain items that you might need to upgrade the bullets, so you might have to choose over first aid. Go for the bullets, I would say. I would have bullets often enough, but there's a lot of times I wish I had more bullets. And you get a pistol kind of towards the beginning of the game. As you progress further, you get a few more weapons here and there. But I could only use them for so long before I ran out. So if you do get weapons, the game does kind of make you feel like, oh, I have to use this very sparingly, only when I feel the absolute need, so I don't run out of bullets. Because that would be an issue you run into quite a few times. And as far as the melee goes, the melee's fine. You start out with this one sort of weapon that you get to use to fight enemies, and then later on, you get one that allows you to get through barriers. It's more of an axe sort of weapon, and that's kind of the feeling of this game as well, is as you go through and progress further, you go back and lock areas that you couldn't get to before. You know, you're kind of used to this sort of type of experience with this. Later on, I was able to buy a weapon, actually, by saving up enough money, and at the end of the day, I don't know for sure if it was worth it or not. The weapon was powerful, but it was really slow moving, and I felt that a lot of the time I was better off not using it than actually using it, and it takes up a lot of inventory space. So I don't know if I'd replay this again if I would spend the extra money on that over being able to buy other items. Now, mention buying other items. There is a merchant or two you do come across in the game, but again, it's very sparingly. It's kind of, oh, here's one merchant in the middle of this map, but he's kind of the only one around. So if you need to get back to him, you have to either find new shortcuts back to him or work your way all the way back to buy items. And here you can buy medicine and things that you need for crafting or that sort of thing. So I would almost recommend like prioritizing buying stuff for that than buying a certain item if you see one that looks appealing. I mean, I'm glad I bought it just to try this weapon out, but at the end of the day, I wish I'd spent it on bullets. And as far as the currency goes, it's teeth. That's right, you're using teeth to buy stuff, so that's exciting. Now, for the game itself, it's kind of split into multiple chapters. Even though I wasn't able to finish the game, I felt like the game did have a good amount of content to it. I feel like you could finish it in maybe 10 hours or so, 7 to 10 from what I played with it. You do come across other characters in the game. The character you play, you don't really see too much because it's first person, but there is a voice to the character. All the characters in the game are voiced, which was nice. and it gives you some dialogue options. You can go through and learn more information, or just skip to the main point and move on. And as you're going through the map, you find a lot of notes. A lot of notes explain the background of the story. What's going on? You're finding out the lore of this town, why all the people are gone, what happened to these people, and why is there a lot of dead bodies. And one of the, I think, cool things about this game as well is these traits. So you get these traits, and these traits help you with your abilities in terms of maybe making you more stealthy, more persuasive in conversations. And then there's a one that I got at the beginning, which I really want to try, was being able to talk to the dead. So you do see a lot of dead bodies in the game, and more often than not all the time, but majority of the time, you can talk to them. You can talk to their spirits through their dead bodies, and through that, you get to learn more about what's going on. Sometimes they give you quests to be like, oh, if you find this item happen to lie around, bring it back to me. And then when you do, you get to choose to free their spirit. Now, I never got to find out what the end result is of freeing the spirits, but it was an extra little something that you can do. But if you didn't choose that trait in the beginning, you would have that experience locked off for you. So I was glad I kind of chose that. But with the traits, just like everything else, it's rare and far in between. There was only, I think, 3 times total where I came across the ability to get another trait, and it gives you a whole selection to choose from. So you have to really take your time and select which trait you think is going to be best for you in your gameplay. There was one I chose later on that I might have regretted choosing, and I wish I could have gone back and maybe choose a different one, but I was kind of still sticking with what I got. I made it work overall. Saving, you save at the mirrors in the save houses. There is some autosave though too, so if you kind of die at a certain point, you might get an autosave, but usually you get back to the safe house where you last saved. That's like where your starting point is, and you might have to double all the way back to where you were to continue on. Yeah, overall though, I definitely recommend checking this game out. I played on PC and Steam using controller. I think it's definitely worth your time if you're into that type of horror. I had a good time playing it overall, and I recommend you check it out.